Hello everyone, my name is Masha and today I'm going to teach you how to make this checkered friendship bracelet. Before we begin, I just want to quickly mention that this video is sponsored by 33 Acres. They make these beautiful soft blankets for only $15.99. There is a link in the description where you can purchase them, and more about them at the end of the video. Now, this bracelet is pretty simple to make. However, if you're a complete beginner, I don't recommend starting with this. I have a lot of tutorials aimed at beginners, and I recommend starting with my beginner's guide. I'll leave that linked in the description for you. I would classify this bracelet more as intermediate for people who have made at least a couple other bracelets and are quite familiar with the general technique of making them. So with that in mind, I'm not going to be going into extreme detail in this tutorial, but let's get into it. So for this bracelet you need 4 colors, and I've picked out these 4 colors, and you also need black or white or whatever color you want for the outline. You need 2 strings per color for all the colors and 6 strings for the outline color. So I decided that for this bracelet I'm going to be doing triangle ends, and if you want a full in-depth tutorial on triangle ends, I do have that available for you, so I won't really be going into detail here. But I want to start making my pattern with the yellow, so that is the point where I'm going to cut my pattern into a triangle. And I'm going to bring out all of my strings according to the pattern. So going from black to the double yellow, black, double green, and black again. And then on the other side, I'm going to bring out black, double red, black, double blue, and black again. So that's what I'm going to do now. And again, if you want a more in-depth tutorial on triangle ends specifically, I actually have 2 of those, both of which will be linked in the description. Alright, so I've brought out all of my strings in the order that I'm going to need them. I'm now going to start following the pattern. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to do the first grid. So there are 2 black strings in the center here that connect between one another and then each go their separate ways. One goes all the way to the right and one goes all the way to the left. Now in this pattern we are using the straight edges technique, which again, if you want a completely separate tutorial, there is one available. But the basics of the straight edges technique is to use forward backward knots on the right edge string and backward forward knots on the left edge string. And since I created this pattern, I made it with that in mind. So the pattern already has forward backward knots on the right and backward forward knots on the left. So what we're going to do is we're going to connect the 2 black strings and then move one all the way to the right until the edge string where we do a forward backward knot, and then the other one all the way to the left until the edge string where we do a backward forward knot. So let's start with that. The first knot that you do, connecting the 2 strings in the center, you're going to be doing very, very carefully because that is the knot that connects the 2 halves of the triangle end. So I'm very gently pressing it up and adjusting it as I go along the knot. And then, as I said, with this string, we go in a row of forward knots on all of the other strings until we reach the edge, onto which we do a forward backward knot. So I did the row with the black string on the right. Now it's time to do the same thing on the left, but with backward knots, of course. The black string in the center goes all the way to the left in backward knots on each of the individual strings until the last string onto which it does a backward forward knot instead. So there we go, the outline is complete. Now let's go in and do the first square in the center. So that square is the yellow square, and it's between the yellow and the red strings. Let's take those out, separate them from the bunch. All we need to do for the square is do 2 forward knots with the first yellow string onto the 2 red strings, and then 2 more knots with the second yellow string onto the same 2 red strings. So let's start with the first one. We take the first yellow string and we do 2 forward knots on the 2 red strings. And I'm saying red very loosely here because they're mostly orange, but they are sort of pastel red. Then grabbing the second one, we do the same thing. We do 2 forward knots with the yellow string onto each of these, onto the 2 red strings. And that's it, the square is complete, just 4 knots. Now let's close that square off. So we grab the black string that was next after the yellow, and we do the same thing. We do 2 forward knots onto the red strings, closing off that square with the black outline from the left side. And then we do the same thing on the other side. We take the black string That comes out right next to the yellow. And we do 2 backward knots onto the yellow strings, closing off this yellow square from the other side, giving it an outline. Now the 2 black strings meet in the center, we make a knot between them. It can be any knot since they're strings of the same color. And that's it, the yellow square is done and the outline of that square is complete also. Next up, we're going to do the 2 squares, one on the left side, one on the right side. And it's the same principle. You separate the colors. So this square is going to be of red and it's going to go onto the green. You grab the first red string and you do 2 backward knots onto the green strings. You grab the next red string and you do the same thing, 2 backward knots on the green strings. And then you do the outline. So let's start with this one, grabbing the same string we just did the outline with on the yellow, and we do 2 backward knots on the green. And then on the other side, you grab this black string that's closer to the red ones, and you do 2 forward knots on the red string. And then once these black strings meet, you do any knot between them. Since they are the same color, I'm just doing a forward knot here. So there we go, the red square is complete as well. Now let's move on to the blue one on the other side. You separate the blue and the yellow, since the blue is going to be doing knots onto the yellow. And same thing as the other side, you grab the first blue and you make 2 knots onto the yellow. Then grabbing the other blue and doing the exact same thing. 1 backward knot onto the first yellow string and then another backward knot onto the second yellow string, doing knots of blue. Next up, we're going to do the outline. We're going to take this black string from the center that's closest to the blue and we're just going to do forward knots onto the blue strings. That way we are closing off this square with this black outline. And then on the other side, we grab the black that is closest to the yellow and we do backward knots onto each of the yellow strings, doing the same thing as we did for the other squares and closing off the outline of this square. And then in the center where the 2 black strings meet, you just do any knot between them. We're nearly done with the repeating steps. Now we just need to do the little triangles on the edges here. And we're going to start with the first red. Since we are following the straight edges technique, we're going to be doing a backward forward knot with the first red onto this edge string here. And we're going to follow that up with a knot between the 2 red strings. I'm just going to do a forward knot right now. And then we grab the other red string and do the same thing, a backward forward knot on the edge string here. And that triangle at the edge is only 3 knots, so you don't need to do any more. Now you just need to close off the triangle with the outline, so you take the black string and you just do backward knots onto the red. And then once we reach the edge string, we do a backward forward knot for the edge with the black on the edge string. And then same thing, but obviously in reverse on the other side. With the yellow strings, let's start with the first yellow string. We do a forward backward knot onto this edge string here. And then we need to meet the 2 yellow strings. I'm just going to do a backward knot between them, but as they are the same color, it doesn't matter which knot you do. And then with the second yellow string, I'm doing a forward backward knot onto the edge string once again. Now grabbing this black, we just do 2 forward knots on the first string, we do a knot, and then on the second yellow string we also do a knot, and then for the edge we do a forward backward knot following the straight edges technique. And there we go, that is everything you need to repeat. There is no more to this pattern. That's literally it. There's just one sort of triangular shape that you need to follow. Alright, so I've got my bracelet to the length that I want it. Obviously it's out of frame, you can't see it. But now I want to flip this triangle. So at the moment the triangle is pointing up, I want it to point down so I can make the triangle end. In this pattern it's really easy to do that. We start by filling in the top triangle, just like we did previously. Alright, so we filled in the top one, we now need to fill in the 2 ones on the sides. Alright, so this is the point where it starts to differentiate. So usually we would go in and we would do the triangles at this point on either side. We're not going to be doing that at the moment, and instead we're going to focus on the center piece here and fill in this square instead. And there we go, we have created a triangle shape. At this point, you can start making the triangle end. And once again, I do have an in-depth tutorial on that, but basically we grab the outermost string and the string next to it. We do a forward knot onto it. We grab the next string, we do a forward knot onto both of these strings at the same time in a bunch. Then the next one, and do a forward knot onto all three of them at the same time, and so on, grabbing the next string, doing a forward knot until we reach the center. And then the same thing on the other side, but with backward knots. And that's it. I'm now going to do twisted ties for the ends. And again, I do have an in-depth tutorial on that. And this is how the bracelet turned out. I'm very happy with how it turned out. It's so cute and quite simple to make as well. I hope this tutorial was understandable. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'll try to answer as many as I can. So before I go, I want to quickly talk more about these blankets. These blankets are super cute. Just look at this one. Isn't it adorable? I just love how bright and colorful it is. There is also this one that is with unicorns, and it looks just so magical and beautiful. I believe they also have another color available, which is pink. But these blankets are super, super cool. They are so soft. I love the way that they feel. The texture is just amazing. And on the inside as well, it's very soft and sort of fluffy. Feels very nice against your skin. They're circular, which I think is very cool. It's a very unique shape. And I think these guys are perfect to snuggle into just because how soft and cute they are. But they're also really good as decoration. You can just throw it on a piece of furniture and use it as decoration. In fact, my flatmate decided that this one is his. He liked it so much that he's gonna steal it from me and use it for himself. In any case, I think these guys are great, and they only cost $15.99. The link will be in the description for you to purchase. And thank you to 33 Acres for sponsoring this video. Thank you so much for watching. I post videos on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and sometimes I also post bonus videos. I recently also created a second channel, where I'm also going to start posting regularly about other stuff not related to bracelets. The first video I did was about how I create these videos, so if you're curious about that, then feel free to check it out. I'll leave that in the card and in the description as well. There's definitely more videos coming for that. I already have some pre-filmed, so I'll be really happy to see you guys over there. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!